All right, I want you to picture something. Imagine you've got a startup.
Okay.
And not just any startup. You've just landed funding from, like, the absolute titan of the industry. The person who basically invented the market.
A dream scenario.
Exactly. And your product is being developed by the same mind that built the iPhone. You've got partnerships lined up with the biggest names in the world. I mean, by every single metric, you are about to be a unicorn.
$1 billion exit is practically a guarantee.
It's a mathematical certainty. And then, poof.
Oh.
The whole thing just evaporates because of some corporate merger you had absolutely nothing to do with. A signature on paper 3,000 miles away. You lose your funding, you lose distribution, you're left holding the bag. And then, just to twist the knife, it happens again.
Twice. That sounds like a Silicon Valley nightmare.
It does, but that is basically the story we're covering today.
Yeah.
Except it's not a tech company. It's a rock band from Portland, Maine.
A band called Rustic Overtones.
And honestly, just calling them a rock band feels like we're selling them a little short, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. This is a group that just defied any easy label. But the real headline here is that this is the band that had David Bowie, Clive Davis, and the entire major label machine behind them, and somehow still ended up as maybe the greatest what-if story in modern music.
Yeah, and for this deep dive, we've pulled together their whole discography, industry notes from the late 90s, a bunch of interviews. And our mission today isn't just to talk about a band you might not have heard of.
Right.
It's to use Rustic Overtones as a lens to really understand the brutal mechanics of the music industry, the so-called major label curse, and what resilience really looks like when the corporate world just collapses around you.
It's a perfect case study.
Yeah.
Because on paper, Rustic Overtones should have been one of the biggest bands in the world by 2002.
For sure.
But the fact that they weren't.
Yeah.
Well, that tells us a lot more about the industry than it does about the band.
So let's get into it. Let's rewind the clock. Early 90s, we're in Portland, Maine.
Right, 1993. It's a totally different world. And you had this little three-piece cover band called Aces Wild.
Aces Wild.
Just Dave Gutter, John Roods, and Matthew Esty.
That sounds like every band playing in the corner of a dive bar on a Tuesday night for free wings.
And that's exactly what they were. They were grinding. But what the source material points out is that they had this uncommon work ethic for a high school cover band. They didn't stay in that lane for long.
Okay.
They moved to originals super quickly and put out this rare early album called Smile.
Which is basically impossible to find now, right? A total ghost.
Practically. But the real shift, the moment where they go from local band to a real prospect, is the mid to late 90s.
Right.
They start touring the Northeast, paying for everything themselves, crammed in a van, sleeping on floors, the whole deal. And out of that grind comes the 1998 album, Rooms by the Hour.
And this is the turning point. For anyone listening, you have to understand, in 1998, with no social media, breaking out of a place like Maine was so much harder than it is today. You couldn't just, go viral.
You had to physically move records. And they did. Rooms by the Hour made enough noise that it ended up on the desk of, well, arguably the most important man in the music industry at the time.
Clive Davis.
Clive Davis.
Let's just pause on that name for a second, because if you don't follow music industry history, you might not get the weight of that. This isn't just some A&R guy.
Right.
This is the president of Arista Records. He's the kingmaker.
He's the kingmaker.
Yeah.
He discovered Whitney Houston. He signed Patti Smith. He orchestrated the comeback for Santana.
So if Clive Davis signs you, you're not just getting a record deal, you're getting anointed. You're being told, you are next.
That is the perfect word for it, an anointing.
Yeah.
And he personally signed them. That endorsement just opens doors that are usually welded shut for a band from Maine.
And suddenly their song Hardest Way Possible is in the Rob Schneider movie The Animal.
Exactly.
Which, okay, looking back, The Animal is maybe not Citizen Kane.
No.
But in the early 2000s, a soundtrack placement in a big comedy, that was a huge deal, a massive marketing tool.
Absolutely. It put them in front of millions of people. And Arista didn't stop there. They paired the band with Tony Visconti to produce their major label debut.
Okay, again, context is everything here. Tony Visconti isn't just some producer.
Not at all.
This is the man who shaped David Bowie's sound. He did T-Rex. This is the architect of glam rock.
So let's just take stock. You have the legendary executive, the legendary producer, the Hollywood movie placement. The rocket is on the launch pad.
The engines are firing.
But this is where we have to talk about something called an orphan project.
And this is where the dream starts to glitch.
The music industry is just so volatile. As Viva Nueva is getting ready to launch, there's a massive corporate shakeup at Arista.
And the unthinkable happens.
Clive Davis is out. he leaves the company.
And this is the critical part for anyone listening who works in any corporate job, not just music. If your champion, the person who hired you, who signed you, who vouched for you, if they leave, you are in immediate danger.
You become a liability overnight. You're part of the old guard. The new executives want to launch their projects, not the last guys.
So even with the talent, even with the Visconti production, the deal just falls apart.
That are orphaned.
That's devastating. You have the finished product, but the store just closed down. But looking at the timeline, they didn't just fold.
No, they pivoted. And they got picked up pretty quickly by Tommy Boy Records.
Which feels like a good fit. Tommy Boy was cool, they had credibility.
It seemed like a lifeline. So the album, Viva Nueva, finally comes out in 2001. And we have to talk about this album.
Yeah.
Because the liner notes are just insane.
Okay.
You've got David Bowie making a guest appearance.
Which I'm guessing came from that Tony Visconti connection.
Almost certainly. But you also have Imogen Heap and maybe the weirdest of all, Funkmaster Flex.
Wait, Bowie, Imogen Heap, and Funkmaster Flex? That sounds like a guest list created by a random word generator.
It does. But it really speaks to the band's sound, which was this super ambitious fusion. But before we get into the music, we have to close the loop on this curse.
Right. So Arista failed. Now they're with Tommy Boy. The album is out. People can actually buy it.
And then history repeats itself. But this time, it's not an executive leaving. It's a distribution collapse.
You're kidding me.
Tommy Boy had their distribution deal with Warner Bros. Records. In 2002, that deal ends.
So just because of paperwork between two massive corporations, the band loses their entire platform again?
Yes, they literally achieved the dream twice.
Yeah.
And twice it was dismantled by lawyers and accountants before they could even properly tour the record.
That has to be just psychologically crushing.
Oh, no.
To get to the finish line and someone just moves the tape.
It was too much. The emotional whiplash was staggering. So in 2002, the band broke up.
Wow.
They played this 3-hour marathon final show at the State Theater in Portland. Basically a wake for the dream.
3 hours. That's a long goodbye.
They left everything on that stage.
Okay, but I want to challenge this idea for a second, that it was just bad luck. You mentioned that guest list, Bowie and Funkmaster Flex. Is it possible the band was just, I don't know, too weird for a major label?
That's a very valid question.
I mean, was the curse really just a lack of focus on their part?
Well, let's track their sound. They started with influences like Earth, Wind and Fire and Tom Waits.
Okay, so soul and gritty storytelling. I get that vibe.
Then on Rooms by the Hour, they get much more jazzy. You have tracks like Pink Belly. But by the time they hit the major labels, they're pivoting hard into hip-hop.
Right.
I even found a note that they actually appeared on a Naughty by Nature album in 1999.
Wait, seriously? Rustic Overtones is on a Naughty by Nature record?
They are. And their own song, Smoke, would often have a guest rapper come out during their live shows. They were blending everything.
So, okay, put yourself in the label's shoes. You sign a rock band that sounds a bit like Tom Waits, and 2 years later, they hand you this hip-hop hybrid album produced by the guy who did Ziggy Stardust.
Exactly. It's the classic artist versus repertoire conflict. The label wants product A that fits neatly into an alternative rock radio slot. The band evolves and delivers product B, this genre-bending thing.
And without Clive Davis there to say, trust me, this works.
The new execs probably looked at it and said, what do we do with this? Is it rap? Is it rock? We don't know how to sell it. We're out.
So the bad luck was made worse by the fact that they were maybe too far ahead of the curve. They were doing the genre blending thing way before Spotify made that normal.
Exactly. If they came out today, they'd be celebrated for that. In 2001, it was a marketing nightmare.
So 2002 hits, they break up. But this period in between from 2002 to 2007 is really interesting because it's almost like a control group for this whole talent versus luck experiment.
That is a great way to put it, because if the band failed because they weren't good enough, then the members should have just faded away.
But that is not what happened.
Not at all. They thrived. Dave Gutter and John Roods formed Paranoid Social Club. And what happens? They get a song, Wasted, in the movie Beer Fest.
Another cult comedy soundtrack. These guys are magnets for that genre.
They found their niche. Then you've got Spencer Albee, the keyboardist. He forms a band called As Fast As. Their album gets a 4.5-star review from AllMusic.
Wow, that's a huge critical success.
And the drummer, Tony McNabo, he goes on to become the touring drummer for Ray LaMontagne.
Whoa, Ray LaMontagne is a massive artist. That's a serious, high-level gig.
A huge gig. And Ryan Zoidis, the sax player, was splitting his time between two monster funk bands, Lettuce and Salif.
Okay, so the theory holds up. The talent was undeniable. The vehicle, the band itself, was the only thing that was broken.
Which brings us to the reunion. And this is where the story goes from a corporate tragedy to something more like a buddy comedy.
The Tony McNabo strategy, I love this.
It's brilliant. It's early 2007. Tony starts calling the old members one by one. He calls Dave and says, "Hey, I talked to everyone else. They're all in for a reunion. Are you in?" Dave says yes.
So he just lied to him.
He lied to all of them. Then he calls Spencer. "Hey, Dave's in. Everyone else is in." He just fabricated the consensus.
The prisoner's dilemma, but for getting the band back together.
And it worked. Once they were all finally in a room, they realized they'd been tricked, but they also realized how much they missed playing together.
So they make the announcement on Portland radio.
Of course. On WCYY in May 2007. Total surprise. They book a couple of shows, and they announce a new album is coming.
A new album, Light at the End. But did anyone still care? I mean, 5 years is an eternity in music.
Did anyone care? Light at the End, which they released independently, became the fastest-selling local disc ever in the state of Maine.
That's incredible. It just goes to show you how loyal that fan base really was.
And the band felt it. They'd originally said this was just a summer fling reunion, but at one of the shows, Spencer Albee told the crowd, "We're never going to leave you again."
That's a powerful moment. It feels like they finally realized their success wasn't going to come from a boardroom in New York.
Exactly. It was going to come from the people right there in Portland. They stopped chasing the machine and just embraced their community.
And speaking of being ahead of the curve, there's that little historical footnote I love.
Oh, the radio thing, yes. Rustic Overtones was the very first group to ever perform live on XM satellite radio.
The very first.
The first. So again, you see them positioned right at the cutting edge of culture and technology, even if that mainstream fame never quite hit.
So they're back. They're local heroes. But bands are living things. They change.
They do. In 2008, Spencer Albee left the band. It was totally amicable, but he had been a core member. They brought in Nigel Hall, other incredible keyboardist from the band Lettuce. They just kept moving. Released another album in 2009. They proved they could work as a successful independent band.
But the resilience test wasn't over. And we have to talk about 2019 because the story takes a turn that has nothing to do with contracts or labels.
Yeah, this is the toughest part of the timeline. In March 2019, Dave Noyes, their trombonist, died unexpectedly.
And from everything I've read, he wasn't just, the horn player.
No. He was described as the glue that held the whole thing together. In a big band with all these big personalities, you often have that one person who is the emotional anchor. That was him.
That's just devastating. How does a band even continue after losing someone like that?
Well, true to form, they used the music. They released a self-titled album in November 2019.
And the way they made that album is so unique, right?
It is. They built it around recordings that Noyes had made before he passed away. So they were essentially collaborating with him, even after he was gone. It wasn't just a tribute to him. It was a record with him.
That's beautiful. And the band is still active today.
They are. They have new members. They're still playing shows, still writing.
So let's zoom out here. We started this whole conversation talking about the major label curse. But when you look at the whole picture, from a dive bar to David Bowie to getting crushed by 2 labels, breaking up, reuniting, surviving tragedy, what's the real takeaway?
I think the Rustic Overtones story really forces us to redefine the word success.
How do you mean?
Well, if success is a platinum plaque on the wall of a mansion in Beverly Hills,
Right.
then yeah, they failed. They don't have those top 10 hits.
Yeah.
But if you look at the longevity, the artistic respect, collaborating with legends like Bowie, the record-breaking local sales, the sheer survival.
They're incredibly successful.
Incredibly.
It's about the ability to just keep creating. Even when the machine breaks down all around you, they literally outlasted the executives who dropped them.
That's a powerful way to put it. Those executives are long gone. The mergers are ancient history. The band is still playing.
It just highlights the survivor bias in music, doesn't it? We think the best bands are the ones we hear on the radio.
Exactly. But the radio plays the bands that survive the boardroom meetings.
Which makes you wonder how many other greatest bands in the world are out there sitting on a hard drive in a vault somewhere, unreleased because of some corporate merger in 1999, just waiting to be rediscovered.
That's a haunting thought. A library of lost classics.
It really is.
But luckily for us, Rustic Overtones fought hard enough that we actually got to hear them.
Well, I'm glad we did. If you want to hear what the major label curse couldn't kill, go listen to Rooms by the Hour or Light at the End. It's a piece of music history that really deserves your ears.
Absolutely.
Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you on the next one.